Europe finds itself stumbling toward yet another devastating energy crisis, with officials appearing caught off guard despite repeated warnings from industry experts. Deep energy-linked frustration is spreading across the continent's heart, reminiscent of previous supply disruptions that crippled households and businesses. This marks not the first time European nations have faced such challenges, but the recurring pattern raises serious questions about long-term energy security planning. The crisis threatens to disrupt manufacturing sectors, spike consumer bills, and potentially force difficult choices between heating homes and powering industries during critical winter months. Energy analysts warn that Europe's continued dependence on volatile supply chains leaves the continent vulnerable to geopolitical manipulation and market speculation. The situation exposes fundamental weaknesses in energy infrastructure that have persisted despite previous crises and promises of diversification. As temperatures drop and demand increases, European leaders face mounting pressure to implement emergency measures that could reshape the continent's energy landscape for decades. The unfolding crisis will test Europe's resilience and force a reckoning with its energy future. Pakistan and Afghanistan have declared a truce following devastating airstrikes that left over 100 people dead, bringing temporary relief to a region torn apart by cross-border violence. At Kabul's emergency hospital, dozens of desperate families crowded around a thick book, frantically checking names of victims killed in a brutal airstrike on a rehabilitation center. The United Nations confirms that more than 100 civilians lost their lives in the attack, highlighting the human cost of escalating tensions between the neighboring nations. The rehabilitation center, meant to provide hope and healing to vulnerable populations, became a symbol of tragedy as medical staff struggled to treat the wounded and identify the dead. This ceasefire comes after months of increasing hostilities that have displaced thousands of families and strained already fragile humanitarian resources in the region. The truce represents a crucial opportunity for both nations to step back from the brink of wider conflict and address underlying security concerns through dialogue rather than violence. International observers hope this pause in fighting will create space for meaningful negotiations that could establish lasting peace along the volatile border region. China's conspicuous silence regarding Iran's recent actions has exposed Beijing's calculated approach to international partnerships, revealing that even close allies become expendable when core national interests are threatened. The muted response from Chinese officials marks a significant departure from previous diplomatic support, suggesting a fundamental shift in how Beijing prioritizes its global relationships. This strategic silence demonstrates China's willingness to sacrifice partnership loyalty in favor of protecting its broader economic and geopolitical objectives, particularly as it navigates complex relationships with Western nations and regional powers. Analysts interpret Beijing's restraint as evidence that China's foreign policy has entered a more pragmatic phase, where ideological alignment takes a back seat to practical considerations involving trade routes, energy security, and international standing. The development signals to other nations that Chinese partnership comes with conditions and limitations that may not be immediately apparent during periods of mutual benefit. Iran, once considered a reliable ally in China's efforts to challenge Western influence, now finds itself isolated as Beijing recalculates the costs and benefits of continued association. This diplomatic distancing could reshape Middle Eastern alliances and force Iran to seek support elsewhere in an increasingly polarized world. England has officially opened the world's longest coastal path, a monumental achievement that grants walkers unprecedented right of access to the entire English coastline for the first time in history. The King Charles Coastal Path represents years of careful planning, legal negotiations, and infrastructure development to create a continuous route spanning thousands of miles along England's diverse shores. This groundbreaking initiative removes barriers that previously prevented public access to significant stretches of coast, opening up pristine beaches, dramatic cliffs, and historic harbors to millions of outdoor enthusiasts and tourists. The path connects existing coastal walks with newly created sections, requiring extensive cooperation between landowners, local authorities, and conservation groups to balance public access with environmental protection. Walkers can now traverse the complete English coastline, experiencing everything from rugged northern shores to gentle southern beaches without encountering access restrictions or private property barriers. The project is expected to boost local economies through increased tourism while promoting physical activity and mental health benefits associated with coastal walking. This achievement positions England as a global leader in public land access and sustainable tourism, potentially inspiring similar initiatives worldwide as other nations recognize the economic and social value of comprehensive coastal access. The controversial messageboard 4chan has openly mocked a substantial £520,000 fine imposed by UK regulators for serious online safety breaches, highlighting the ongoing struggle between internet platforms and government oversight. The penalty includes a massive £450,000 specifically for the platform's failure to implement adequate age verification systems that would prevent children from accessing pornographic content. UK authorities determined that 4chan's lack of protective measures exposed minors to harmful material, violating regulations designed to safeguard young internet users from age-inappropriate content. The platform's defiant response to the fine underscores the complex challenge facing regulators attempting to enforce online safety standards on international websites that operate beyond traditional jurisdictional boundaries. This case represents a broader conflict between free speech advocates who view such regulations as censorship and child protection groups demanding stronger safeguards for vulnerable users. The mockery from 4chan suggests that financial penalties alone may prove insufficient to compel compliance from platforms that prioritize unrestricted content over regulatory requirements. As governments worldwide grapple with similar online safety challenges, the effectiveness of traditional enforcement mechanisms against global digital platforms remains uncertain, potentially requiring new international frameworks for internet governance.